Hello and welcome to sentence diagramming exercise number 3, wherein the sentences, at least on the front side, are pretty much all Beatles lyrics. That was a band in the 60s. Your mom or dad or grandparents might know about them if you don't get hip. You can still buy their shirts at Hot Topic. Okay, number 1 in the warm-up. The parts of a sentence will nearly all wind up on the main line of the diagram. The parts of the sentence are super important because that's how the sentence works. It's the skeleton of the sentence. It's the most important parts. It's the meaning. That's where the meaning is, or most of the meaning is. And all the parts of sentence go on the main line of the diagram. A little bit of thinking coming at you there. Write each of the terms in the top box of the table. That's here in either the box for parts of a sentence or parts of speech. You know, I really hope that if you don't have these memorized, you could use your grammar and diagramming handout to help you, because it's all listed there. Parts of a sentence in that list are indirect object, predicate adjective, subject, direct object, predicate nominative, and predicate. The parts of speech in this list are article, verb, preposition, adverb, noun, and adjective. All right. I hope you can do that, because it's basically just reading off your handout. And it's good to know. Because the difference between parts of speech, which is what each individual word happens to be doing, and parts of sentence, which is like the fundamental building blocks of a statement, the distinction between those things is pretty important. Okay, so I'm going to erase. I'm going to scroll up. And we'll do practice sentence number 1. Okay, write the parts of each sentence above the appropriate words, label the part of speech of each word below, diagram each sentence. The first sentence is a little bit tricky. It doesn't have any prepositional phrases. The predicate's pretty easy to identify. Comes. Who's doing that? The king. It's really unusual for a subject to come after the predicate in English. But that's what's going on here. It's called inversion. It happens in poetry a lot. Okay. Is there a direct object? As in, like, the Sun King comes what? No, he doesn't come. He comes here, but that's maybe how he comes. So there's no direct object here. We're actually done with the parts of speech because there's no indirect object either. I mean, parts of sentence. We're done with the parts of sentence because there's no indirect object here. Let's do the parts of speech. King is a noun. Sun is an adjective describing what kind of king we're talking about. The is an article. Comes is the verb, and that's the predicate. And here, I mean, we could say that where is where he's where he's coming, or here is where he's coming. But that question, where, here, sometimes the question where is answered by an adjective. Sometimes the question where can be answered by an adverb. So asking the question where doesn't help us tell adjectives and adverbs apart. But I hope you can see that there's no noun over here for the here to be describing. It has to be an adverb. So how's he coming? He's coming over here. All right, let's do the diagram. All right, it's really important to capitalize the first word of the sentence in your diagram, because sometimes that's the only way that you can tell that that's actually the first word of the sentence. If here weren't capitalized, I wouldn't know which word is the first word of the sentence, because in this case it's not king and it's not the. So please, capitalize your first words. All right, here comes the Sun King. All right, again, that's called inversion, when the subject and predicate are reversed. It's unusual. It's not all that surprising to see in a song lyric, because songs and poems are related and it happens a lot in poetry. Here's the next sentence, which we'll do bit by bit. I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden with you. And we got a hint here. The predicate is would like to be, which is right there. Okay, what we do next is this. What we do next is you pause the video, identify all the prepositional phrases, and then get back to me. Okay, there are 3 prepositional phrases. Under the sea, in an octopus's garden and with you. That leaves us with this as the sentence. I would like to be. And we know that would like to be is the predicate, so that's also the verb. That means that I must be the subject, and therefore a noun. Okay. Now here is something tricky and something new in diagramming land. I'd like to be what? I'd like to be under the sea. Under the sea answers the question what? And so here you have something in English that's a little bit unusual but shouldn't be all that surprising. It's a whole prepositional phrase acting as a predicate adjective. Mind's blown, I know, right? But stop and think about this for a second. Can an adjective be a predicate adjective? Like, I feel hungry? Obviously, yes, it can. That's why we call them predicate adjectives. Can prepositional phrases act as adjectives? Yes, they can. Like, the dog in the window is the one for me. Which dog? The dog in the window. In the window describes the dog. So sometimes, not that often, but sometimes, we're going to see prepositional phrases acting as predicate adjectives. And, the diagram for this, like, oh my goodness, so challenging. We'll see. All right, let's do the parts of speech in the meantime. I and would like to be, noun and verb. Please label the rest of them and then get back to me. Pause the video. Okay, we've got 3 prepositional phrases here. Under is a preposition. Is an article. See is a noun. In is a preposition. An is an article. Octopuses is an adjective. It's also a possessive. That'll tell us how to diagram it. Garden is the noun at the end of the preposition. With is another preposition. And you is a noun. I hope you got all of that, because it's pretty, that part of it's pretty straightforward. Okay. The diagram now. Start by diagramming the main line of the sentence. Use rule of sentence diagramming number 1. Just do the subject and the predicate. I'll show you how to do the predicate adjective. Okay, here's our subject and predicate, I, and like to be, or would like to be. That's the predicate. Now, here we have a prepositional phrase as a predicate adjective. There are 2 ways that we can do this. One way is to be like, hey, we've got a prepositional phrase. It's acting as a predicate adjective. I know that prepositional phrases go on lazy L's, and it kind of looks like, if we stop and think about it, we've got a built-in lazy L right here. So we could just use that for the preposition and then that for the noun in the prepositional phrase. So this is one way you could do it. And that'll work. That's fine. Here's another way to do it. The important thing here is that we remember that even though under the sea is 3 words, it's only a single part of sentence. So we've got to make sure that we're treating those same words as one unit. And a way to emphasize that visually is the other way to diagram this. Oh my gosh, what's that? It's a stand for something. We're going to put something on top of it. There's the lazy L for the prepositional phrase. That's going to be messy. Under. Let me make it less messy. Slightly less messy. Under. Under the sea. Some people like to call this a stickman, like legs, body, shoulders, arms. Either way you do it, whether you make a lazy L on a stand or whether you use the built-in lazy L. This is how you diagram a predicate adjective that's a whole prepositional phrase. It's a way of keeping the words together to show that even though it's 3 words, they're acting as a single part of the sentence, the predicate adjective. Okay, The rest of it is a little more straightforward. We did I would like to be, and we just did under the sea together. In an octopus's garden with you. 2 prepositional phrases. There's nothing, the rest of it is pretty straightforward. See if you can figure it out. Pause the video. Okay, now, in an octopus's garden does not describe the sea. The sea is not in an octopus's garden. In fact, the octopus's garden is under the sea, is in the sea. So we're not going to put in an octopus's garden over here. In an octopus's garden is more about how this person would like to be. I'd like to be under the sea. Yes, I would. How? How under the sea? Well, more specifically, under the sea in garden in an octopus's garden. Okay, so we did those words. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. I'd like to be, what's left? Oh, sorry, just with you is what's left. Now, is the sea with you? No. Is the garden with you? No, the garden's not with you. Would I like to be with you? Yes, I absolutely would. This is a love song, in case you couldn't tell. It's kind of a goofy one. That's why Ringo sings it if you know anything about the Beatles. He tends to sing the goofy love songs. So both in an octopus's garden and with you go under the predicate. Oh, hang on. Now, if you thought that in an octopus's garden describes under the sea as a whole, you could move it over and have it coming down here off the main line. That'd be okay. If you diagram the predicate adjective this way, you could do the same thing with you. Under the sea, how? Under the sea, with you. But I think this is the most straightforward way of diagramming it. I'd like to be how in an octopus's garden. I'd like to be how with you. I'd like to be what? Under the sea. How? With you. How? In an octopus's garden. All right. So please take the next sentence. We would be warm below the storm in our little hideaway beneath the waves. Step 1, identify the prepositional phrases. Step 2, identify the parts of the sentence. Subject, predicate, what? Direct object, predicate object, adjective or predicate nominative. And then identify the indirect object, if there is one. So, please, take yourself, do it, then label the parts of speech and diagram the sentence. Pause the video till you're done, then we'll go over it. Okay, game face is on, because we're going to go kind of fast here. These are the prepositional phrases. Below the storm, in our little hideaway, and beneath the waves. That just leaves we would be warm at the beginning of the sentence. We is the subject. Would be is the predicate. I hope you could tell at this point that those two words go together as a single predicate. And warm is the predicate adjective. We is a noun, would be is a verb, warm is an adjective. Below is a preposition, the is an article, storm is a noun, in is a preposition, our is an adjective, talking about the hideaway, it's a possessive. Little is an adjective, hideaway is a noun. Beneath is a preposition, the is an article, and waves is a noun. Time to diagram. By the way, I really hope that you did all this work, including the diagram beforehand, because you really need to practice this independently. And this is a good opportunity for you to do that. All right, we would be warm, there's the main line. Now, What is the manner in which we would be warm? Well, below the storm in our little hideaway beneath the waves. So I'm thinking about this for a second. It sounds a little funny, but we could say below the storm in our little hideaway beneath the waves, we would be warm. So these shebangs, at least some of it's going to be connected to the predicate because it could go back at the beginning of the sentence. How would we be warm? Below the storm. Now, the question is, where does in our little hideaway go? Does it connect to would be, or does it connect to storm? And the question is this: could we just say, we would be warm in our little hideaway beneath the waves? And the answer to that question is yes, we would be warm in our little hideaway beneath the waves. And the fact that we can even answer that question is an indication that in our little hideaway does not describe the storm, because we just took this word storm out of the sentence. But it still makes sense, so it's got to be connected to the predicate, which we did not take out of the sentence. In hideaway, what kind of a hideaway? Our hideaway, our little hideaway. And again, the fact that we can take below the storm out of the sentence and still have this make sense, we would be warm in our little hideaway, that tells us that in our little hideaway does not connect to storm. Because if we took storm out of the sentence and it was connected to storm, then it shouldn't make sense. But it still makes sense when we take storm out of the sentence. That means that it's not connected to storm in the diagram. It doesn't describe the storm. But what kind of a hideaway are we talking about? Our little hideaway. I believe, yep, there's no comma there, so that tells us that that there might be a connection. Notice there is a comma there between storm and in. What kind of a hideaway are we talking about? A hideaway beneath the waves. What kind is an adjective? Beneath the waves is a prepositional phrase acting as an adjective describing the hideaway. And beneath is a preposition. The dolphin swam beneath the bowl of soup. All right, we would be warm below the storm in our little hideaway beneath the waves. Beneath the waves. We are done. I hope you enjoy the Beatles lyrics and whatnot on the other side. These aren't just lyrics by the Beatles on this side, at least it's actually all from the same album. Good times. I'll see you for the next lesson.